I'm pumped up. How's it going, Mets fans? Thank you guys all so much for chiming in for the latest post-game show here on the channel, folks. We got so much to deep dive after the Mets have themselves a massive, truly massive blowout victory, the first of a four-game set that began tonight against the Miami Marlins, winning by a whopping score of 10-4. How's it going, guys? Let me know your thoughts in the chat right now. If you're chiming in the live stream, for people on replay, make sure to let me know your thoughts down below. How you feel after the Mets kick off to really start things off this four-game set with a massive victory here against the Miami Marlins. This is the first of 19 games that the Mets will have against Miami, and the first of 11 that they'll have over the next 20 to 22 game stretch. So Mets play the Miami Marlins a lot over these next couple weeks, and thankfully they're off on the right foot again, taking advantage of opportunities given to you. Talking about that sixth inning, 7 runs the Mets scored in the sixth inning. This isn't even the first time the Mets have scored 7 or more runs in one inning this year. That is how crazy they've been. For the first time, guys, since 1988 at this point in the season, the Mets are, yes, 20 games above 500. Can we take a moment to appreciate that, folks? Oh, that's so great to say. The Amazons are now 43-23 on the year. Again, 20 games above. The Braves lost their first. Finally, the Braves lost a game, ending their 14-game winning streak. Losing getting shut out 1-0 to the Cubs today, no less. Cubs end their 10-game losing skid by winning tonight against these Braves. So the Mets are now 5.5 games up currently in the standings. Not that it means much early in the year, but again, it's still definitely positive for us Mets fans, and I am just absolutely pumped. Hope you guys are too. I hope everyone has been having a phenomenal Friday night, the way that I know I surely am. So, guys, I'm going to be deep diving here in a second. Everything that transpired in this whirlwind of a game in the Mets victory 10-4 over the Miami Marlins. Then from there, I'll be answering all your comments, questions, and concerns. And then we may take some callers tonight. Nothing's a guarantee. We will see and feel out how the live show is going. But again, appreciate everyone that's coming in right now, guys. Thank you all so much for that. For people live on replay, be sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Help us get to 100 likes for the first short-term goal here on the show. And then help us, of course, get to that being in 16K subs, the next short-term goal here on the channel. A lot of breakdown. I'm absolutely pumped up. So many guys I would hope step up starting in tonight's game, led by Mr. Smile and Francisco Lindor, did exactly that. So let's just get into this, folks. We got a lot to deep dive. I appreciate my upwards of 200 viewers, everyone first chiming in, guys. You are all the best. For people on replay, the same applies too. But talking about this Mets game, guys, again, we have Cookie Carrasco on the bump. And what did Cookie do? He absolutely shoved. Yes, he gave up 3 earned because he got in a little bit of a jam there. And, of course, the runs. Unfortunately, the biggest thing that I've noticed with the Mets bullpen is that they have struggled mightily more often than not to get outs for any starter that has a couple guys on base and exits the game in that inning. That holds true again today, but no less, Cookie was cruising really up in a lot of ways until that 7th inning. He gave up some contact, yes, but 6.1 innings pitched, 8 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts on what? Roughly 100 pitchers. And again, I apologize for the lack of visuals, folks. Just give it a minute, then I'll pick back up. It's just my connection because it's been so wacky up and down for literally a month now. My apologies once more. John, thank you so much for the $2 donation in the chat. He says, I want 30 games over 500 now. Let's go. I know if the Yanks can do it, hopefully the Mets can find themselves in a similar category. Take advantage of the opportunities given you. Like I said, the Mets have an easier schedule by far here in the second half of the season as we get closer and closer to that point. So they need to continue to win games and win big. Again, against teams you're supposed to beat, and that was surely the case tonight against a Miami Marlins team that had Pablo Lopez starting. Lopez, this was his first start in 7 games. Last time he pitched strong, only gave up 2 earned over 6 against the Houston Astros. But Lopez, who's been dealing with a wrist injury, was day-to-day, was a late start that was official here against the Mets. And the Mets jumped on him early, baby. And it was, again, because of Mr. Smile, Francisco Lindor. Starts off, however, with WardyNYM doing what he does best, getting on base. A nice leadoff base knock for the Mets there. So then Starling Marte reaches on what should have been an easy fly out. However, I believe it was De La Cruz there in center. Was not able to catch the ball for whatever reason. Drops it. So 2 on, no out. And then Francisco Lindor, who was surprised last second tonight by his wife to have his mother in attendance. The first time that I believe his mother has even watched Lindor as a New York Met. And the last time that she's been around since Lindor was first acquired by the Mets in the trade with the Cleveland Guardians. So what a pleasant surprise that was for Francisco. And he played, in my opinion, one of his best games of the season, not just from an offensive standpoint, but more so defensively. He was an absolute wizard there in the infield, robbing any type of potential infield hit that the Marlins were looking for. But that massive dead center 440-foot bomb right there to give the Mets an early 3-0 lead. Lindor was pumped up. You see it in the highlights. We're feeling electric about it. What a huge start to the game it was. And again, another day. It sounds like a day that ends in Y, where the Mets start off a game and have themselves scoring a run or multiple in the first inning or two. They've been doing this so consistently every single game, it's felt like, not just for the past month, but quite literally for the majority of the season. They have just been absolutely rolling. Mark Cannon would follow up that home run with a base knock. That would then end the inning after that. But then we get, of course, this second inning, folks, and Tomas Nido gets on base with a hit-by pitch. Nimmo gets another base knock. The Mets don't score there in the second, but again, they're still tacking on early, really trying to grind out some at-bats from Pablo Lopez before he starts to get in a groove, because he did for a little bit after that. Nonetheless, we head to the third, and one of the biggest plays of the night was from Lindor, and it wasn't even from the offensive side of the ball. It was from the defensive side of the ball. Ends up making a beautiful turn, spin, and throw to get Jazz Chisholm out at first base for the second out in the inning. They originally called Jazz safe, but after review, because the Mets love to challenge things when they know that they for certain got that out there. They do that so often, and they ended up getting it overturned to be the second out. Great play by Lindor. Again, Lindor had at minimum 3 to 4 highlight reel, beautifully turned plays there at short and also in second, depending on the shift. Just great stuff from Francisco. This was a Mr. Smile night, this being in Pride night, and of course the black jersey night. The Mets were back in black, baby, and they showed up. Something that they didn't do all last year when in the black jerseys, but maybe it's because they took the pinstriping away this year. I don't know what. All I know is that when it's Friday nights, I'm loving the Mets' chances of winning, because they have been looking absolutely phenomenal, and more often than not have been winning every single game, if not all, then definitely most of them to this point in these black jerseys. Just fantastic to see. And then we fast forward a little bit, folks, and Miami gets on the board thanks to De La Cruz, no less, who had an error earlier in the game, assuming that was him, if I'm not mistaken. He gets a solo shot off of Cookie Carrasco. That would be the only run that Miami would score there in the fifth inning, but they would start to tack on. However, before you would think that the Marlins could get any potential momentum in tonight's game, folks, the Mets happen. That sixth inning happens. What a whirlwind of an inning this was. One of the best innings of the Mets season, which is saying a lot, because they had that amazing inning in St. Louis where they scored the 5 unearned to come back in the ninth. They had that amazing rally where they scored 6-7 in the eighth when they came back against Philly months ago. I mean, the Mets have had magical innings, and this was definitely up there for sure against this Miami team. And it starts off with a Jeff McNeil base knock. Mark Cannon gets a hit by pitch. That would be one of 4 times the Mets would be hit by. Actually, this was the second time already. Mets were hit by pitches 4 times again tonight. They lead the league 49 hit by pitches. Absolutely ridiculous. Again, we've been talking about it so often. I don't know if and when this is going to change, but what I do know is that this needs to stop. I mean, we are almost at the halfway mark of the season before you know it, and the Mets are getting hit at a clip which would average them to end the year with 120 hit by pitches. This needs to stop before more guys potentially get hurt. Marte just came back from his injury after getting hit a couple of days ago to begin with. It needs to stop. Seriously, if you can't throw the ball properly, don't even be on the mound in the first place. That is how terrible and how consistent the Mets have been ball magnets to this point in the year. No less Canna hit by pitch, 2 guys, less than 2 outs. Then Luis Gourmet gets a single off the wall. Originally, they called it an out, that the outfielder and De La Cruz or whoever was there in center makes the catch, but you look at the review, and it looks like that it hits off the wall first. But in that scenario, that easily should have been a Gourmet double. I don't know what the rule was there. It was completely wrong. The Mets should have scored at least 1 run in that point. However, after review, for whatever stupid reason, it was bases loaded still with less than 2 out. No outs, as a matter of fact. But thankfully, the Mets would tack on. J.D. Davis gets his 1 and only base knock in the game, but it was important. An opposite field RBI to tack on and give the Mets at that point a 4-1 lead. Then the Mets would score a couple more runs without even doing anything. First, it starts with Marte getting himself an RBI walk with the bases loaded. That brings in another run, 5-1 Mets. Then after that, Francisco Lindor gets hit by a curveball down and in. And then just like that's a 6-1 Mets lead. And then to add that cherry on top, the man, the myth, the legend, Polar Bear Pete, Big Meat Pete, whatever you want to call him, Pistol Pete Alonso gets a no doubt first pitch swinging, absolute bomb to the left side, grand slammy, his second grand slam of the season. Alonso has over 60 RBIs now in the year, capped off with, again, a 4 RBI game. Beautiful performance from Alonso. Absolutely massive. Again, the Mets shut the door down on Miami, and that game was 1,000% done there in the 6th. Even though, give credit where credit's due, the Marlins did try to chime and get back into this one a little bit, but not nearly enough to actually have themselves sustain any remote chance of really coming back and winning this game. However, Alonso with that grand salami, that would cap off the inning. Then we get to the 7th, folks, and Cookie Carrasco gets in a little bit of a jam, and that leads Jorge Soler to get himself an RBI double. After that, you will see the exit, that being in Cookie Carrasco, and then with a couple guys on, Adonis Medina comes up, who was called up today because of the likes of Tyler McGill. McGill is now out, will now throw for 4 weeks. He's on the 15-day IL, but he's really out for 2.5 months because he can't throw for 4 weeks. Then he's going to have to get ramped up and have 3 to 5 rehab starts, just like Jacob deGrom was enduring now. So Mets best case scenario, they'll get McGill back late August, early September. Feeling for him, Julie McGill, great member on the channel, and the entire McGill family. Wish him the best and a speedy recovery with his right shoulder situation. But however, Medina comes in, and he wasn't anything spectacular. He leads a couple more runs to come in, unfortunately. Cooper gets an RBI ground out, and then as we then get into the 8th inning, another run comes in. Medina balks, and that brings in a run. And just like that, the Marlins have bases loaded for Adam Ottavino, who then comes in for Medina, trying to get out of the jam. Ottavino walks the first batter that he sees, but then he gets a couple back-to-back outs to end the inning. That was massive. Mets do not surrender any more runs besides that balk there in the 8th and command a 6-run lead as they then get to the bottom of the 8th, where they didn't score. But again, the 4th hit by pitch of the night was a slider that hit Lindor pretty well. Thankfully, he was okay, stayed in the game. And then the Mets shut the door there in the 9th, thanks to Adam Ottavino in the non-save situation, pitching for his 2nd consecutive inning at 1.1 scoreless. Ottavino hasn't surrendered a run in quite a bit now. He's only surrendered 1 measly run in what feels like upwards now of 20 of his last 20 innings. That's how much Ottavino has been rolling. And that, folks, is how the Mets ended up winning tonight by a massive fashion, 10-4 over the Miami Marlins. And as we break down what was doing so well, I really want to talk for a minute about Carlos Carrasco, guys, because look, I understand Cookie didn't necessarily have the best outing that we've ever seen, but Cookie was rolling in a lot of ways really up until that 7th. Now, he got some nice double play balls as well that didn't hurt. My apologies once more, people, for the visuals right now. They dropped for a bit. Just give me a second, guys. Trust me when I say that this is something where it'll pick back up in not even a minute span, so just bear with me. And I also, again, appreciate everyone that's been shopping in here, folks. Jaden, thank you so much for the donation. I'll address that quick. Jane says, Worry, I think it's time for a serious trade video. Jaden, trade content will be coming in the near future, especially with McGill now being out. I mean, it's not necessarily the matter of if the Mets are going to acquire starting pitching or pitching in general by the deadline, but rather when. Will it be all the way up until the deadline that they're going to wait, or will they do it prior? We'll soon find out, but as we speak today, I actually start a list of multiple players I think will be of interest for the Mets. Right fits, more pipe dream fits versus more realistic fits, and guys that, again, could be, under the radar that I will be discussing hopefully in the next week to 2 here on the channel. So stay tuned for that. Dave, thank you so much for the $10 donation as well. Before we get into breaking down Carlos Carrasco, Dave says Lindor 3-run bomb, Polar Bear Pete grand salami, Cookie wins. Oh, yeah, Braves finally lose. LFGM. I mean, the best night you could probably ask for as a Mets fan, right? Dave, thank you so much for that donation. I really appreciate that. Hype in the chat for Dave Kaplitz, a great friend and support here on the channel. Always beyond generous. Always appreciate that, man. But, guys, let's just take a moment to talk about what the Mets, led by Cookie Carrasco, were able to do tonight. I love Cookie and his arsenal. Again, I know he gave up some contact, but Cookie really impressed me for a large portion of this game. Again, 7 punchies on roughly 100 pitches. Wasn't his best stuff, but definitely was a nice bounce-back outing for him after surrendering 5 runs and not even 5 innings against the Angels, where Ohtani and Mike Trout just took him deep left and right. But, guys, as we get into this game now, just bear with me 1 second as I'm pulling up the numbers, because I want to break down Cookie Carrasco's arsenal and what was at really stepping up with his pitch mix that he had going tonight. Between, at minimum, I would imagine 5 pitches of his arsenal, if not 6. I'm assuming it's around 5, though. Okay, guys, let me get here to player breakdowns. 1 second here through Baseball Savant, and here we go. Okay, Cookie Carrasco again, 5-pitch mix tonight, and he utilized it beautifully. Topped out tonight, something that he hasn't done for the sake of all of his other starts, but he threw his slider tied for the most along with his four-seam fastball. 33% of his arsenal was with the slider tonight for Cookie, and definitely had success. He had 19 swings and 7 whiffs, a 37% whip percentage on that one. Topped out at 89 miles per hour on the slider, minimum 85, average 87. Four-seam fastball topping out at, four-seam fastball, 33% of his arsenal as well. Topping out at 95.5, minimum 93, average 94. The changeup, 16% of Cookie's arsenal tonight, folks. Topping out at 90, minimum 87, average 89. Then you get to the sinker, 16% of his arsenal also. Topping out at a total of 94 miles per hour, minimum 91, and the average 93. And the curveball was only 2% of his arsenal tonight. Topped out 82, minimum 81, and average 82. So, guys, Cookie Carrasco, loved what I saw from him tonight. It was fantastic to see him carve up the Marlins hitters the way he did. And again, he gave up some contact, gave him some hard exit velo, gave up some soft exit velo, but thankfully had some nice ground balls. That Lindor was just an absolute madman in the infield. And something that, again, I know that Lindor didn't just have a phenomenal game, both offensively but defensively too. It was just so great to see the fact that he has his mom there as a late surprise by his wife. Again, the first time that Lindor's mother has ever been in attendance for a Francisco Lindor game at Citi Field as a New York Met. And Lindor balls out like no tomorrow. He just looked comfortable. And GKR, I really think, hit the nail on the head, as they were saying earlier in the game, how Lindor wasn't talking as much earlier in the game in the infield, and he looked composed, he looked calm, and this was a level of Lindor that was a little surprising in the sense of, even when he has been rolling, he's been more talkative and things like that, he almost looked like he was comfortable in his element. It was like he knew his mom was watching him, and maybe it felt like the old days for him, right, where he can just go play ball and want to impress his mama, and he did exactly that. So again, I'm so happy for Lindor, his entire family, that was able to be there and to witness what was a phenomenal game for Mr. Smile. And hopefully this is a positive in the right direction for him, who's had an abysmal June, all in hand with that finger injury that he sustained right before the start of the Dodgers matchup. Can't tell me otherwise. So again, I said Lindor was one of 3 players to watch in this series in my series preview show earlier today for a reason. And thankfully, at this point, everything is already panning out. So shout out Lindor. Massive game. And shout out the Mets again, guys, as we take a look at Wardy's top 5 tonight before we get close to looking at the lineup and then answering more of your donations, comments, questions, and concerns, all that fun stuff. Wardy's top 5, it has to be Pete Alonso again. Going 2 for 4 with the Grand Salami. Again, Pete Alonso is on an MVP caliber pace right now, folks. I know Paul Goldschmidt is playing out of his mind, but so is Pete Alonso. It's going to make it for really entertaining to see who stays more consistent head-to-head for the remainder of the year. Alonso, however, 2 for 4 with the Grand Salami. 4 RBIs and a run scored. Lindor, my number 2 star, 1 for 3 with a home run. 4 RBIs, 2 runs scored. My number 3 star, go with J.D. Davis, because I really thought that his opposite field RBI was so crucial in that moment to keep the ball rolling. Again, bases loaded when the Mets should have had at least 1 run scored, but they messed up the play and didn't give Gourmet a double when that was a guaranteed double hanging off the wall. Again, it is what it is now. Love that RBI for him. JD's been swinging the bat so well here in the month of June. Starling Marte didn't have a hit tonight, but he was impactful, and that stood out to me. First start back, again, missed this past game, was a pinch runner, got the winning run scoring at home yesterday in the bottom of the 8th against the Brewers. Though last Marte 0 for 4 today with an RBI, 2 runs scored. My number 5 star, I got to go with Cookie, because again, I thought that this was a really underrated start by Cookie Carrasco. And for a Marlins team that has been swinging the bat better as of late, he really kept them in touch and really kept them in tune. And knowing that the Mets were in a position where this game, how the Marlins were starting to hit later in this one after, that being in Carrasco exited, this one could have been blown up more. But really what Cookie was able to do to that point up until the 7th really was huge for them. And that was, in fact, an X factor for them, in my humble opinion. And then another guy that's definitely honorable mention that you could rightfully have here. I have Brandon Nimmo. Just missed my top 5, but you can completely justify 2 for 5 with a run scored. Nimmo had his base knocks in the first 2 innings of the game because the Mets were getting that much offense rolling. But again, he is a prime leadoff hitter for a reason, folks. Now going through the Mets lineup as a whole, not just with the likes of Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso. McNeil 1 for 3, another solid game for McHits with a run scored. Marquetta, another solid day for Canna, 1 for 3 with a run scored. And then you had Gourmet 1 for 4 with a run scored, another solid day for him, again with that double that you saw there in the 6th. JD Davis, We're talking about him. Tomas Nido, 1-0 for 3 and 3 strikeouts. Not a great day at the plate, but again, these things will happen. Carrasco, 6.1 of 3 earned run ball. Adonis Medina gave up 1 earned run, 2 hits, 2 walks, and a strikeout. Not great, but again, I'm not expecting the world from him. He was just brought up to the Mets 2 today because of McGill's injury. 1.1 innings pitch, and then Ottavino wrapping things up with 1.1 scoreless. He's just absolutely nasty, including 3 strikeouts. So, folks, that's all you really need to know about the game. So, for people in the live chat, I'm going to start to answer more of your donations, or your comments, questions, and concerns. For people on replay, let me know your thoughts down below. How do you feel after a massive victory like this for the New York Mets? Are you convinced that the Mets, again, are going to continue to roll? And hopefully, again, Mets, it's a 4-game set. I want to see them. I don't just want, I need to see them win 3 of 4 against this Miami team. Even though that Sandy Alcantara will be pitching in this series, they took care of, again, one of the best starters in this rotation outside of Alcantara tonight, and Pablo Lopez, who definitely settled in a bit after that first stain. So the Mets, they jumped on Lopez early, took advantage of him being out for 7 days with his wrist injury since the last time he started. I want to see the Mets jump on this pitching more early, and again, just keep themselves in these games. Win 3 of 4. No less. Let me know your thoughts down below. Who was the biggest X factor for you in tonight's game? For people on replay, as always, folks, make sure to smash that like and subscribe on. Help us get 200 plus likes by the end of the live show. Help us again get to 16K subs for the next short-term goal here on the channel. Greatly appreciate everybody in the chat. Let's answer those donations, comments, concerns now. But for people on replay, this is where I'll be cutting things off.